Good day, everyone. Welcome to the next part of the Korean War. For this lesson, we are going to learn about the cause of the war, right from the start all the way to the end of the war, what happened in between. All right. So, for this lesson, you should have your worksheet with you. Should look like this. Okay. So we have a series of North and South Korean map. All right. So we will indicate on the advances as well as the attacks of the different sides at different points of the war. Okay, so let's start the lesson right now. Okay, and when I left you, there was a lot of tension between the North and South Korea as well as their leaders. Alright, so on the first map, let's start off with indicating the North and South Korea. Alright, so let's just do this. Have red and blue ink ready. Please do it neatly so you can better understand the map when you're doing your revision. So what I'm going to do here is just I'm going to indicate the different parts of Korea using color. Okay, so the North, let's put the communist North as red and the democratic South as blue. Okay, so now, okay, the war began here, 30 April, June 1950. June 1950, it was like this, right? Early morning, June 1950. The South is red, the North is red, the South is blue, Communist and Democratic Korea, respectively. Surprise attack in June 1950. Right, North Koreans, out of the blue, with no warning, did a surprise attack on the South. On the South. Right, so now with the red half and the blue half, let's just draw arrows down to indicate their attack. Okay, at this point of time, we have learned that South Korea is not as strong as the South. South Korea is not as strong as the North. Their capital, Seoul, it should be somewhere around here, right? Fell within 3 days of the attack. Okay, that was how quick, how surprised they were of the North Korean attack, that the capital was taken over within 3 days. That was not all. Okay, they were pushed all the way to the back, to the Busan perimeter. Imagine from June, July, August, within 2 months, right? They were pushed all the way back. Where were they pushed back? Let me show you. Okay, this should be on your next map. They were pushed back to this corner here. Right, to this corner here. This area is called Busan. Okay, so the North actually pushed them all the way back to this corner here. Sorry, let me get that right. Yes, that was how far they moved and they managed to take over the South. Alright, only the southeast corner of South Korea had not fallen to the North. What happened after that? Alright, United Nations as well, USA as well as the United Nations. Right, United Nations is the organization that took over from the League of Nations after World War II. They decided that they could not just do nothing while North Korea expands itself. Right, they remembered their experience with the war after what Hitler did. Right, they just, when Hitler started taking over other countries, League of Nations just kept quiet. Right, United Nations said that no, we cannot let this happen. Alright, if you do not do anything, right, similar events like World War II will happen again. So United Nations, USA together with United Nations decided to take action. Alright, so how did they do it? They decided to appoint a World War II hero, okay, which is General Douglas MacArthur. This guy with the pipe that you see here. Alright, he's supposed to be in charge of the Korean War. Alright, in charge of taking back South Korea. So what happened? let's go back again. So now we have, okay, let me just color this. Alright. Okay, sorry. Okay, so what happened? Hey, let me just get the color right first. Okay, we have Busan here. Let's get back to the red. Okay, very good. Okay, so the Incheon landing, what happened was this General Douglas MacArthur, he came out with this plan. Alright, okay. What he did was he made a huge risk of landing American troops right over this part of Korea. Okay, so hold on, you don't color first. So here is this little place called Incheon. Okay, this little place called Incheon. Okay, so what he did was he wanted to trap the North Korean army. So the US army attacked this way. From Busan, they move up, and from Incheon, they move in. Okay, their plan was they wanted to trap the North Korean soldiers. So basically, they wanted to cut off the North Korean soldiers. Let me just get the color right. Sorry. Okay, they wanted to trap the North Korean soldiers here. Alright, true enough, they managed to do that. Okay, and they were very successful. Alright, so now, okay, so he wanted to go behind enemy lines and cut the North Korean forces into two to destroy the communication lines. Alright, you can start to draw this on your map on the Incheon landing. Okay, so this is Busan. Sorry, this is Busan. Okay, it was very, very successful. Okay, General MacArthur's plan worked very well, and they eventually managed to push back the North Korean forces back to the 30th parallel. Okay, so at this point of time, we shall go back to the original map which we had earlier. Here, back to the 30th parallel. Let's just draw an arrow to show that they have managed. Okay, back at the 30th parallel. Okay, so at this point of time, it was in around October, they managed to push the North Koreans back at the 30th parallel. At this point of time, the United States as well as the United Nations were thinking, what next? Okay, what next? What do we do next? Alright, do we enter North Korea, or do we just leave things as they were before the war? Okay, so what were the considerations? Alright, so the argument for staying at the 30th parallel were, we have already secured our objective. We wanted to rescue South Korea, we wanted to kick out the North Koreans, we have done that, so we should stop. However, at this point of time, North Korea will be very weak because they've been defeated in South Korea. Okay, so if you don't take any action, right, the other countries, the whole world is watching. Is USA afraid to take on communism? Right, there is the case for containment. Right, now, or do we just push the communists right out of North Korea? We are now having the upper hand. Even possibly we can even push them out of China if you're very successful in North Korea. However, by doing that, first, there's China right on top here, right? There's China here, right? If you push into North Korea, China will retaliate. And even worse, USSR is on top of China, will USSR get into the war as well. So now that was their conundrum. Do we stay or do we move on? Okay. So the decision was we press on. Okay. So they have decided that they are going to press on. So General Douglas MacArthur was given permission by the President of the United States, President Truman, as well as UN, to push his troops into North Korea. Alright? But he said that you can only push through as long as the Chinese or the USSR do not do anything. If they did, we are going to leave them and come back into South Korea. Alright? So, by pressing on, that was what they did. They managed to push them right about maybe somewhere around here. Right? They were very successful. Oops, sorry. Right about there. Alright, this one should be under the press on. Okay, so we managed to push them right about there. Let's just indicate the arrows. Okay, oops, sorry. Right about there. Okay, let's move on to the next map. What do you think happened? Obviously, the Chinese, seeing that their enemies are right at their doorstep, okay, the border between China and Korea, there's a river running, which is the Yalu River. Okay, let me just do that. Okay, China warned the US that if you cross, we would intervene the war because you are now right at our doorstep. Okay, okay, and you're getting too close to me, man. It is not safe for me. So, in 1950, China warned UN that if you continue the Korean War, it would lead to widening of the conflict. This simply means that if you continue pushing into North Korea, you're getting too close to me, I will take action. I will enter the war. Alright, so when General MacArthur continued to push in, the Chinese, okay, decided to fight back. Okay, so between China and North Korea, the border, there's a river that runs through here. It is called the Yalu River. Let's get an arrow for the Chinese. Let's do this. Okay, the Chinese came into the war and helped the North Koreans pushed USA and the UN forces back, okay, into the 38th parallel. Okay, they caught them by surprise. General MacArthur did not think that the Chinese would actually attack the UN forces, but he did. Okay, caught them by surprise and pushed them back into the 38th parallel. Okay, that's the end of the map. Okay, if you turn to the next page, okay, it did not end there. Okay, President Truman was aware that this could potentially escalate into something bigger. He did not want a repeat of the World War, and he also did not want to fight with China, a huge country, fighting in Korea. He did not want that to happen, so he told General MacArthur that we should not continue the war. However, General MacArthur was very angry. He felt that they should not back out from fighting the Chinese. He was critical of the president. He even threatened to use nuclear weapons on China, which to President Truman was unacceptable. If they do that, China's ally, the USSR, will also use the nuclear weapons. Alright, because General MacArthur was very critical, or he kept criticizing President Truman. President Truman couldn't take it. He fired General MacArthur. He was dismissed and replaced him with General Ridgway. So in April 1951, General MacArthur was sacked from the operation in South Korea. Okay, because the war was taking too long, and President Truman did not seem that like he was going to win the war. Okay, he was very unpopular. He did not want to continue as the US president. Another former general became the US president. Dwight Eisenhower became the next US president. Dwight Eisenhower promised the people of the United States that if they elect him, he will end the Korean War, which was which was taking a toll on US, because US lost a lot of men fighting in Korea. Right? They were very unhappy about it. So Dwight Eisenhower, okay, he promised that he would end the Korean War. This was in January 1953. Something else happened after that, which made ending the war easier. Stalin, alright, he died in 1953. Okay, the new leadership in USSR also realized that fighting a war in another country, alright, is also not beneficial for them. They realized that they do not want to continue the war. It will only lead to killing of more communists. Okay, they decided that let's stop fighting. Okay, because it's costing us a lot of men and costing us a lot of money. Alright, I'm not talking about a peace treaty. They're just talking about stop fighting. We don't need to sign a peace agreement. We just need to stop fighting. Okay, so this is what I mean by an armistice. If you look here, this word armistice means just to stop fighting, not to sign an agreement, not to say that we are at peace with each other. We just want to stop fighting. Okay, so armistice talks after that. Okay, from 1951 to 1953, there were a lot of disagreements. All right, what are we going to agree on if we stop fighting? Okay, some things that they disagree on was, where should we divide? Is it to the original 30th parallel, or is it to the last point where the Chinese pushed the US Army? Alright, and what about the prisoners of war? Right, should we return them to the respective North or South Korea, or can they choose to remain? Alright, because as we know, some of the South Koreans who are unhappy with Syngman-rhee, they wanted to remain in North Korea, and maybe some of the North Korean soldiers who are unhappy with the communist system, they wanted to return to South Korea. So what will happen to all these people? Alright, so there was a lot of disagreements. Eventually, USA, USSR, China, and North Korea decided to sign an armistice. Okay, they decided that they were not going to fight any longer. Okay, however, South Korea still did not want to end the war because they believed that they should take over the North. Alright, however, they were being pressured by USA. Okay, so USA, China, and North Korea decided to sign an armistice. We're going to stop fighting. South Korea initially did not want to sign the armistice, but without USA support, they had no choice but to sign the armistice. So we have learned that, alright, the Korean War, at the start and at the end, it all went back to the original position. Alright, so the next lesson we are going to learn about proxy war. Okay, today the 30th parallel looks like this. Okay, so if you can see in the picture, this person here, that should be the South Korea. Okay, and this one should be the North Koreans. Alright, so it's just like that. They are not at peace with each other. They just stop fighting. Okay, should anyone cross the border, it could just spark another war. Alright, so that's the end of today's lesson. I think it's quite a simple lesson, quite short. I will continue with the next video. As usual, please leave any questions you have on the comment section and I'll answer them as soon as possible. Alright, thank you very much. Oh,